Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm very excited about today's Capsule Creative Table with Adam Morgan. My name is Natalie Taylor. I lead marketing at Capsule. I'm joined by Capsule's CEO and co-founder, Champ Bennett.
Hey, everybody.
And of course, our featured guest, Adam Morgan. Very excited to hear from him. Before we get started, please drop in the chat your name, where you work, what you do there. There's a couple reasons that we like to do this. We at Capsule host a lot of events for in-house creative leaders, in person, doing more virtual events now. And we really enjoy connecting people across this community. And the reason we care about this community of in-house creative leaders is Capsule is a video editing tool. I'll just give you some quick context. Made exclusively for enterprise brands, but particularly brands who care about brand standards, have very strong creative and design leadership. It is a tool that allows creative teams to self-service video within their organizations and scale it in an on-brand way. It's very easy and collaborative to use that allows the creative team to kind of enforce those brand guidelines across video that's being scaled, and is currently used by some of the world's leading brands. And so if you are interested in scaling video in a brand compliant way within your organization, would love to chat more with you. Please reach out to us. But I'm going to move on to our kind of the agenda of today's call. What we're going to do is Adam is going to give a presentation. He's going to share his research around creativity and AI. Very excited to hear about that. Then Champ will kick off a short discussion with Adam, and then we will move into a broader Q&A. And so feel free to add questions to the chat as you think of them. But we can also, this is a Zoom. It's a fairly casual, open environment. And you can also just kind of raise your hand and come off mute and ask your questions live. So keep that in mind. And so with that, I'm very excited to introduce our featured guest, Adam Morgan. Adam has 3+ decades of experience in the marketing and advertising space and has worked both agency side and in-house, leading brands like Splunk and Adobe, and now leading brand at Twilio. And he's a published author, a podcast host, and very, very excited to hear from him. And I will hand it over to you, Adam.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And so good to see some friendly faces in there. Kim, you came up on a call today. I may recommend someone to you, but anyhow, good to be here. Thanks everyone for hanging out. So the presentation I'm going to talk through is pieces of it I gave at a recent event. And it's really this idea of like, everyone's just terrified in the creative world of AI and how it's changing things and how we're going to keep up. And I thought I'd just go back and share a little bit of research that I did to help, kind of give you just a different perspective on everything that's happening. But first, I have to acknowledge AI is amazing and it's freaking awesome. And there are so many use cases that we're using right now, at least on my team, of how we're doing it. For example, even just as we're doing like illustrations, rather than just starting from scratch or just, by hand, we can pump out a whole bunch of different ideas and then start to convert them and then start to trace. And it just shortens the whole workflow by so much. And even in, still shoots and video shoots, certainly, elements that you can use it with whatever tool you're using, especially, that our sponsor today. But, where I could quickly go in and like the upper left-hand one was the video that we shot live, and then we wanted to change different people and just try out. It's just so seamless to create a bunch of stuff. And even just, I'm not going to go through but even just raw video and video editing and all the parts and pieces of AI is just, it's incredible. But then you hear a lot of these quotes. This is the one from Sam Altman of like 95% of all of the agencies, strategists, and creative professionals, we're all toast, right? It's going to be handled by AI. And I, in so many conferences, have heard similar things from CMOs and CEOs and all that stuff. And, it's like, yeah, we're screwed. If you keep listening to what they have to say, that it's like all changing and we're in this new world. But I just want to say, not yet. Like everything that's painted in those doomsday pictures, I don't think are 100% true. And that's why I want to share with you just some interesting insights why I think creativity is going to live on forever. And we're always going to have amazing jobs. And we're going to have new tools, sure, but I want to walk through like what just makes us so unique. And a lot of this comes from a book I wrote called Sorry, Spock, Emotions Drive Business. And it was this whole notion of like, originally, when I wrote this years and years ago, it was just all about, I had clients, I was working in an agency and I had clients that were like, forget about all the creative mumbo jumbo. Let's just get straight to the facts. And if you just tell people what they want to hear, then everything will be great. And I wanted to take a different angle on it. It's like, okay, sure, I can spout off all the latest reasons why I think that creativity is important, but I took a different approach of just interviewing neuroscientists and reading scientific studies. And I thought, if I can just use hard science to prove the value of creativity and the bottom line, that seems like a little bit easier take for some of the CFOs of the world that just don't believe in it. So I'm going to pull from a couple studies from that and then some other ones that I've just come across that I just think are fascinating. And I just want to pull into just a different point of view and some stories so that you think about creativity in just a different way, especially in this world of AI. So the first question that came up is like, are humans logical? We think that if you go back to Descartes and all of the whole charioteer and how we're driving away animal instincts and we're just supposed to be, rational human beings, and that's where we're going to get ahead in life. It's really this question of like, does logic really rule? Is that really, really important? And if you've read any good neuroscience book, there's this awesome story that's a good setup here of this fine gentleman. His name is Phineas Gage, and he was living in Cavendish, Vermont in like the 1820s. And he worked on the railroad. His job as a foreman on the railroad was to help blast through the mountains and lay tracks so that the trains could make it through. So you see him in this picture with his tamping iron, that big rod. And what they do is they'd go up and they drill a hole and they put a bunch of black powder in there. And you take that tamping rod and smack it down, put a wire in it, run off, and then pull that, quintessential little rod, like little T, and it'll blow it all up, and then they'd clean it up and make way. Well, unfortunately for him, he was a fine, nice guy, but you see his left eye is all sewn shut. What ended up happening is one day when he was tamping down the black powder, it sparked on the side and lit it off, and that rod blew up in his face, and that rod went up through his eyeball and up through the top of his head and out. And what you would have thought is, okay, the guy's dead, but he's not, and that was an interesting thing. A case of Phineas Gage's, it blew a hole through his brain, but he was still conscious and aware, and the doctor came up and sewed him up, and he lived through it, and it was totally fine. But the big change is like the area of his brain that was blasted away was the area that helped control emotion. And there was another person, Antonio Damasio. He wrote a great book in the 1990s, and he had studied a lot of these same people who had that same part of their brain removed. Not everyone through a dramatic moment like Phineas Gage, but they all had through either like, tumors or cancer or this or that, different things that had happened. But the interesting thing that he learned about dealing and working with these people, and the same thing happened with Phineas, is that when they have their emotions removed, and these people were just like robots, they were very linear and logical and would just, be very analytical. But what he found is there was a fascinating thing that they could not make decisions. So if you came up to him and asked him, hey, do you want to have your appointment next Wednesday or tomorrow? They would start from scratch. It was like a pro and con list from scratch every single time, making a new decision. They couldn't ever like pull from their past or like experiences they'd had. It was just like starting from scratch every single time. And so the takeaway from him that was really fascinating is just that logic alone doesn't work. Like as human beings, we can't just be supercomputers alone. We can't just be pure logic machines. We need emotions. Emotions help trigger, and I won't get like so deep into the synapses of how the brain fires and how it helps, but it really is just knowing that we can't just be straight up logical machines. We need emotions. The next study was this study that I want to say, okay, how much does emotions matter? Does emotions make us unique and special? And how does it really relate to, and trust me, at the end, I'm going to tie it all back to like AI and how this relates to it, but there's just some fun stories we're going to get through here. So there's a study done by Cosmedy and Tooby called Evolutionary Psychology, a Primer. And what they wanted to find out is, okay, does Descartes have it all right, where we are logical machines and that we need to drive away these animal instincts, and that animal instincts actually make us weaker, and we need to just try and kind of beat them to be better human beings? And what they found out was the opposite. It was the emotions that made us human and made us stronger than animals. For example, our ability to love, our ability to fear disease, our ability to care about others. Like, those were the things that they found out that were actually made us human. So it's not like all those emotions are animal instincts. Those emotions are core to the human experience and actually a huge, huge valuable benefit to being human. So emotions are what makes us human. Number 3, another interesting story. So this is a separate one of a book, Incognito by David Eagleman. He had this idea he has a whole chapter set aside in this book where, as he was looking through how the brain works and functions, you would think that it's just like, data in equals data out. You think a bunch of stuff and you do this, and then, you know all the right decisions and you'll be able to make great decisions as a human. But the reality is, he says, the brain operates like a team of rivals. If you've heard the phrase team of rivals from Lincoln's cabinet back in the day, where he would put, rivals and opposites in the cabinet so it would make him stronger. And what David found out is that in your brain, you may put in the same data points, but you'll never get the same results out. And the reasons why is because the way our emotions work and the way that we just think of things, we're unpredictable. I'll give you a great example. Like, you working out. You may say, it's logical for me to work out every single day, and I'm going to make a plan to work out every day. But one morning you wake up and you're like, I'm a little cold, I'm not going to do it. Or the next day you're like feeling really gross because you ate a big McDonald's hamburger and you're like, 100% I'm going to work out tomorrow. Like, it just varies and it comes and goes. And even if you were in the exact same state, like, there are just parts of our brain that sometimes we'll let, one voice win, and sometimes we'll let another voice win, and it's not rational, and it just happens. So it's like this quagmire of all these different things. And so what really matters is, like, just knowing that our human experience, the context matters, and things are going to change, and we're not always going to be predictable. We're just going to be completely irrational, and that's okay. That's kind of the fun of the journey. So we're not predictable is the takeaway from that one. Next is just real basic stuff of, like, the right and left brain. And even though I could argue, like, anymore in neuroscience, it's not just about right and left brain thinking. It's more of, like, actually front and back brain thinking, or two-system thinking, if you've read Kahneman. And it's really just trying to understand those two systems, because you could lose half your brain and the other half will still recreate all the same functions as the one side. But one thing that is interesting to note, sorry, that was way too nerdy, and that was context you didn't even need. But when you're looking at the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, one traditionally is focused on denotation, which is your left, which is, all right, if I have a series of a list, I'm going to put all the parts in order and I'm going to logically go through it. It's more, rational thinking. And then the creative side, which is not necessarily just the right half, but the creative system is more about connotation. And why is that important? Because it's more of, like, understanding context. It's understanding the connections between different humans and when you're talking with them and how that matters. It's like understanding the punchline of a joke, right? You can have all the logic in the world, but if you don't have all that context and the ability to sift between it all, you can go to a stand-up show and, like, not get anything, and it would just be super boring. That's really, really important in the human experience beyond AI, of really understanding context, because the jokes, you could try. Here's the thing. I've even, like, teased that with my company, Twilio, we do a lot of voice AI stuff. I've always thought of this idea, like, what if I did a stand-up comedy routine with a voice AI bot to see how well it could, or even like some other stand-up thing or group of 3, and see how it could handle, kind of hanging out with all of them. But the reality is, like, that context and the connotation is so wild, because if you've read, there was a great quote from Birnbach where he's like, creativity is always shifting and changing. What was good one day, the next day will wilt and wither. So it's really like knowing that context is like a daily thing. You can't just plug in, hear all the jokes, and AI is going to know them all. Like, we as humans are constantly watching, 6-7 2 years ago wouldn't have made any sense to anyone. But now we're like, okay, that was a fun reference to 6-7. So it's like understanding that context and connotation is where we stay connected. So human context matters deeply. And then finally, the capacity of the human brain. This was really interesting for me. So there are some studies. The first one was done by, what was it called? Man, I got to remember it. It was called ±7, some limits to our capacity of human understanding. And then there was a new study done by the University of Missouri a few years later that really tried to understand your logic and your emotion, right? Of like how much your brain can compute. And on the logic side, it's usually like 4 variables, plus or minus a few. So that's why phone numbers are always in groups of 3 or 4, maybe up to 7 at the max. Like we as humans, short-term memory can really hold a couple different variables, but beyond that, we can't. But when you look into the subconscious or the emotional kind of hard drive of everyone's brain, I think it was at the Salk Institute did a study that there were, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but it was like multiple petabytes, like beyond petabytes for each, synapse, because there's like billions of synapses that we can all, or millions of them that can like make new patterns and connections. And so it was really like the amount of memory that you truly could hold in your kind of long-term storage is so vast. It's so vast. It's like holding the entire internet, like every web page, every little moment. So when we start to worry that it's like, oh, filth, like AI is catching up and they're so fast. Yes, it is. And it can hold a lot of data and it still will. And it's going to burn a lot of energy. But I just want to keep in mind that every single human also has like an amazing amount of data and context already built in to every single brain. So the human capacity is endless. So those were just 5 takeaways that I just wanted to have you think about. Like, I'm going to go through some more stuff now of like, what does this matter to us and AI and why creativity will never go away? Just understanding human biology is so fascinating to know that how we work and how we're going to, come up with ideas and make new connections. Like when you go into computers and AI, it's very linear, right? It's A plus B equals C. And we're nowhere near that with the context, with the team of rivals, with our logic and our emotion all mingled together and just the capacity that we have. It's just so fascinating to me to know that it's just kind of a breath of fresh air for us to think, okay, we've got some pretty awesome advantages built into every single one of us. And especially if you're a great creative and you know how to take advantage of that and really dig in to your concepting ability, your ability to make connections, your ability to look at ideas from a different way. Like it's fascinating of how that human hardware that is not easily replicated by AI is something that you truly have at your advantage. So bringing some of that together, here's some reasons why I think creativity will always remain and is pretty important. First of all, yes, humans are original. If you think of some of those studies that I just brought up, we are unpredictable. Just look at your friends and family, like even yourself. Like you don't know what's going to be happening or what you're going to say or what you're going to do at any given moment. Like that's the beauty of humanity, is that we're unpredictable and we're going to make new connections and we're going to make up new jokes that, AI will never, create or understand. Like it's really that context and we're curious. You think of like every moment that is, or cultural breakthrough that's happened is started with human rebellion, and it's human creativity and moments and curiosity. And we really can understand the meaning behind things and understand the why. And it's not just about the how we're going to get things put together, but truly looking at the bigger picture. I think that's really, really important to remember. Next, I've experienced this, you probably all have, in a world of AI that's making a lot of work slop. We bring taste. We truly are the ones, I've read so many articles recently where it's like, and I kind of saw this with the design-led movement where it was like, at least in internal design systems for companies, after a while we wanted to make it so human and easy and effortless that all of the designs that I look at for systems for, internal product or internal web experiences, they start to look like vanilla. Like they all become the same thing, this super, super simple, system. And so as that happens with more and more AI stuff being created out there, I found that understanding that taste and what your company or what your client values and what they stand for and matters, and bringing those experiences that are just unique and different and fun and engaging, like that taste is so, so critical. And we can't just even move beyond that. Let's see, what else? Next. So working on that AI work slop isn't the answer. I think where we see differentiation for creative people is really understanding that a lot of companies don't feel comfortable just letting AI go wild. You definitely need a human in the loop. You need someone who understands where it's going and can guide it. But also, I think more than that is we know what is good. We know what is connecting with others. We know what feels right. And so I think that's a huge part of like why creatives will always have a job, is like that editor function, to be able to go in there and say, here's what's good and here's why, and here's what we should do more on. If you want to dig more into it, there's an awesome study that McKinsey did on creative leadership of like the 5 reasons why creative leaders make amazing leaders, period. And just some of the elements where it's like creative people look at change and opportunity and don't see it as a threat or a risk. They see it as a must-have, like something that you have to do, and you have to try new things and try creative ideas, and it's required. And so that's why they push harder. There are a whole bunch of other reasons, but it's worth looking into that. I'm not going to spend all the time on it, but really cool to see that in a linear world, the benefits that we have as creatives far outweigh that. And then finally, we do have unique creative skills. So an example of that, I'm talking with my brother-in-law, who's a developer, a month ago, and he was just so jazzed. He's like, look at all these ways that I'm using AI to make code go so much faster. He's like, I used to, what would have taken me a month worth of work, I can do in a day. And just with all these different agents and this and that, I can just make it happen. But then when it came down to he's starting a new company, it's like, okay, how am I going to design? What does the experience look like? It's like there's a lot of derivative things he can go out there and find and try and copy. But he's just like, there are unique skills that creative people have to create that vision of where things should go, that he was just like totally baffled. So just when you think about the unique creative skills that we have, another example of that. So there's this CMO forum that my boss has been on where they bring in top 50 tech brands in the world, and their CMOs have these chats. I got invited to one of them, and they were going through and talking about AI and prompting. And the lead researcher in that group said, we've been working with, so many big companies and helping them get through all their AI strategies. And they said, but in the end of the day, the skill set that you need to have on your team that absolutely, hands down, does the best prompting is anyone with a creative background. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And so going back to my brother-in-law in that story, it's like creatives can do great at AI because they understand what they're looking for. They can detail exactly what that prompt should give and deliver, just knowing the emotional or creative landscape of what we're trying to go after. So I think that's pretty critical to keep in mind that we do have a leg up when it comes to the world of AI. All right, looking into a crystal ball. I don't know where the world's going to go, but here are just 3 basic things. 2 are pretty straightforward, and 1 is like maybe a little more forward-facing of where I think change is happening, and I'm seeing it, or it could be in the future. On that last thing I talked about, the special skills, I am seeing enhanced creative skills. So let's say 10 years ago, when there was this trend that you had to have on your team a separate animation, motion graphics editor, and then you had art directors and designers. And then the world started to blur a little bit with all the tools as things came out. And suddenly I found that a lot of my kind of art director designers were also doing the motion graphics work, right? It was a natural fit, and they kind of transitioned straight into that. And so then the team dynamic changed slightly because I didn't have to have as many different, specialized skills. I could have a couple more generalists. I think more and more of that is what I'm seeing start to come together, where creatives are, whether they were a designer or a writer or a videographer, whatever it is, like they're starting to learn more and more of how to boost their kind of gaps in their creative skills and improve them. So I'm seeing them become great prompters, multidisciplinary creatives. Juniors are going to be starting out as the mid. So with all those fearful quotes from, OpenAI and others that are saying, all these, what's the first place you need to cut? And I felt that like a year ago, a lot of CMOs were like, we got to get rid of we don't need designers and writers because AI is doing all of it. And now that's changing. The tone is changing, that it's like, okay, we need those, but maybe they're a little more skilled, or maybe they're, more mid-levels, and they're giving us more guidance and editing of what's happening. So I think that's definitely going to be something that's going to be happening. Setting the vision, like this is the big opportunity for those who have trained their brain for years to understand emotional experiences. In the era of the experience era, now is the time for more of us to step up and do a little less execution. Maybe production work is going to go more to the AI route, but us focusing more on the why, the story, the vision, the where things are going, connecting the story across organizations, finding where that leads, I think is going to be really, really important. So more focus on vision and story rather than just execution. And then finally, as I see team dynamics, this is something that I'm seeing happen on my team, where in the past you always had you had a PR team and a creative team, and you had a PMM team, and maybe you had an events team, and it's all by discipline or function. And where we're seeing is, think of it more of like inputs and outputs. We're building this big, huge AI beast in the middle that if we want to do campaigns, instead of all these teams working on different parts and coming together and being a cross-functional team, a lot of that derivative work, for example, if we say there's a campaign person who comes and says, I need now a campaign in Singapore and I need it in these languages and this different looking people and blah, blah. With AI, we can get that done fast. And then the job, instead of my creative team doing a lot of that work, goes more to the beginning of inputs, right? We're an input team where we need to look at everything more of as a systems approach. What are the big ideas? What are the big stories we're going after? What are the big campaign pivot points and elements? We need to be the ones creating those systems of putting all those parts and pieces together so that the derivative AI work can be done and churn out all the translations and all the geos and all those other things, so that you have input people at the top fixing the system, a systems approach, and then outputs at the bottom where maybe there's a campaign person who, we don't need 20 of them, but they can go in and start to, orchestrate all of that. So that's where I'm seeing more go, is just establishing that core AI group and then having inputs and outputs on your teams. And maybe there's some crossover between, inputs, whether it's PR or creative or events, it doesn't matter. You're just on the inputs team that's putting stuff into the machine. Anyhow, I'm going to close now just with one fun story. I was listening to a podcast and Reid Hoffman was on there. He's the founder of LinkedIn and now moving on to another AI company. And someone was probing him and saying, why are you starting another AI company if you're afraid of where things are going? And there's all these quotes of you, showing how it could be going in the wrong way. And he's like, you know what? I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s wanting to be a science fiction writer. And I wanted to be a science fiction writer because I wanted to participate in the story and the greater, kind of good of humanity and where they're going. And he's like, he noticed that from the 60s to the 80s, whatever, a lot of the science fiction was all about wonder and awe and where you could go. And it was just this magical stuff. And then you hit 2000s and on, and it's all been dystopian. It's all been robots are coming to kill us and we're dead, right? He's like, so part of where he wants to be a part of that dialogue is, how do we as humans change that narrative? How do we get back to wonder and awe and amazement of what AI can do for you, rather than the fear and all of that? And I think as creatives, that's just an awesome, story for us of how can we be the storytellers? How can we go out and change the narrative? How can we go out and make people excited about the future, where it's going, and be able to control it and know that we have these superpowers that we can help add taste and guidance and all these other great things. So that's just my ending. We're awesome. We're creatives. Go make leaps, make cool stories, and let's change the world in a positive way. I thought that was pretty inspiring.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was awesome. What an amazing presentation and thoughtful presentation. So thank you for delivering it. As I'm listening to you just towards the end here, it's clear to me that you are such a curious person, and this idea of awe and wonder, I think, is really important in terms of the tone and culture that we're setting in our creative organizations. But also, I think it's a really important attribute to have individually to help ourselves understand this transformation that's really happening, because it's so dynamic. It seems to be literally changing every single day. So my first question for you, and by the way, please throw questions in the chat, people, and we'll let you either ask them directly if you're comfortable getting off mute, or I can ask them for you. It's up to you. But my first question to you is just how, you're so knowledgeable on these subjects, how have you been spending your time lately in understanding all this? I mean, you're reading books about neuroscience, you're obviously playing with all these tools. I'm just curious about how you've thought about setting time aside to actually understand this stuff that seems to be changing so quickly.
I don't know. My guess is most people on here are oh yeah, I read that, or yeah, I know about that. I don't think that I'm anything, novel in bringing any of this stuff out, but I don't know. I've been fascinated with creativity and read. Obviously, with like, I've read most of those books back there because I just care deeply about reading, and I see it as like all of my like my champions and my mentors helping me kind of learn and grow. So that's all I'd say. Like, if you want to lead, you got to read. That's what I've said for a long time. I think it's critical. And I'm really bad at TV. That's probably the easiest answer. If I was better at TV, and I've tried, I might have less time, but I'm bad at it. So I don't know. I just think reading and listening to podcasts, and whenever I'm doing projects or things, just always listening. And it's probably, honestly, it probably comes from when I first started out in the ad industry in like the mid 90s, and going through the roller coaster of layoffs and problems and stuff. Like, it probably just made me have a lot of PTSD. And so I'm like, I've got to always be like learning or growing, or I'm toast. So that's probably the reality.
I'm curious how that translates to how you think about your teams as well, who are also caught up in this world of, and I'm assuming that's partly why you put this presentation together. They're caught up in this ever shifting, ground beneath their feet, and trying to understand how they can best apply themselves. How are you sort of leading your teams today? I mean, are you sort of keeping them up to speed on all the things that you're learning? Like, how is the team connecting and learning more about AI, and how it can be helpful in your organization?
No, absolutely. And I know, like any big tech company, we've got all these goals and things where you have to do so much with AI by X amount of months and whatever. There's a lot of pressure. There really is. But I'd say, like, my answer is going back to that Reid Hoffman thing. Like, I just want to inspire not just my team, but everyone else, like in my podcast and everything else, like, to more of that hope and the optimism and where we can go, and that we as creatives are going to be dictating a lot of the future and a lot of the story and where we're going. So I do a lot of that with my team. I think Aaron was maybe, I don't think he made it, but one member on my team was going to show up. But that's what I try and do, is just get them excited and then break it down into small little chunks. Like, it's so overwhelming. It'll be like, all right, this month we're just going to focus on one use case, and let's just focus on that and not get so distracted with everything else. But I think that's what it is. Just keep inspiring them. I mean, that's the reality. If we're not inspired, then we're going to get depressed and scared.
I love this idea of inputs and outputs, and how kind of the role is shifting from building individual assets to building machines or systems that build assets. And that does feel like a natural kind of progression from this concept of like design systems, brand systems you touched on a little bit. What are kind of the practical ways that creative leaders can start to transition inside their teams, along the lines of this idea of like, shifting from inputs outputs? And are there any examples, perhaps at Twilio, where you've kind of like leaned on that idea?
Yeah, I think what we did at Twilio is we just started with a huge, almost like a spreadsheet or a Milo board or something like that, where we just mapped out, okay, what are the main things we do? If it's, all right, the website and how we build the website, or it's content creation. And we just mapped out every single step of what we do in that. Let's just take content creation. If you're doing like a big ebook or a report or something like that, what is every single step that happens along the way? And then it was really fun. Like, you get the whole team thinking of like, which of those steps can we disrupt with AI? And then identify, and we're like, there's no way that the technology is ready right now where you just go in and type, hey, make me this, and it's all perfect. Like, there's just no way. So it was really like identifying all the steps and then saying, all right, again, every month or quarter, we're just going to isolate one of those. Someone's going to come up with some fun ideas of like, oh, there's this new tool that we could use for this. Or maybe if we set up blah, 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 blah. Then we've just been taking each one of those one at a time. And then just, my goal is like, maybe over the next couple of years, we'll get there. We'll get to this full input thing. But for right now, let's see which areas we can disrupt. And then it was fascinating where I had like multiple teams, like, oh, the web team can do this, and the creative team and designers can do this. And if we put it together, like, some of those templates and parts and pieces now can help us do landing pages super easy and fast, right?
Yep.
And at the same time,
at
the same time, it's critical that at the very, very, very top, what does the brand stand for? What's its story? What are the elements? What are the design pieces? Like thinking of a systems design, you've got to create those campaigns and top line stories for all the derivative work to fall out of it. So maintaining that is top of mind for me as well.
Yeah, it seems like over time, the role of the creative will really shift in favor of this idea of systems creation and context creation, as you put it, right? It's the, if eventually there is a world where you do get to type in a prompt and something magically comes out of that that's actually, ready for production, the only way that's going to happen is if all the vision, the brand, the context, the assets are part of the context for that thing to be created, right? Because it's not going to be some general purpose AI system that's going to do that. And so it does feel like that's a recurring theme that we've heard over at Capsule.
Well, and you think about this. Yeah. Sorry, my camera will come back. It clicks off every once in a while. Even if you had an audience, let's say your audience was like IT people or developers. I can't tell you how many times over my career I've had someone come in and be like, all right, we did all the research. Here's what they think. And they'll go through and tell me like the data on that audience and what they care about. And it is every year, it's like so different. And then even then I'm like, then I'm going off my personal experiences of having, developers on my nerd video game group and how they react to things. And when I throw something out there, what they do. And it's just like all that context mingles together. And it's like near impossible. If you just fed that all in a machine, you're like, all right, job done. We know that audience and we're going to deliver a bunch of stuff for them. Like you'd be toast. You would like that context switching and growing and adding more constantly is just that's the human experience. So just have to keep feeding the machine constantly.
There's a great question here from Roland, which was actually on my list to ask you too. So I'll just jump to that. Just how do you think about job roles and team structure? And I guess going forward, like, how do you thinking about upskilling your existing set of creatives to be great at AI? And is that something that like you have like a learning program for? Or is it just sort of clearly you guys have a strong culture of experimentation where you're kind of breaking out teams and trying a bunch of things? Yeah, any learnings there over at Twilio and just how you guys are thinking about that?
Yeah, this is such a hard, huge question because every organization is so different. Yeah. I've done keynotes that are all about team dynamics and how do you build up the right team and what parts and pieces. And it's just so complex. I would say, here are some of the things that I did on my team. You can, extend that to however it would be for yours. We started once with a team, all hands, and just doing a hackathon and took just like a web page or 2 web pages and then broke out into teams that had like a designer, a writer, a strategist, a project manager, or whatever, and just kind of put them all together to just brainstorm stuff and come up with like a little competition. That's one thing that we did. We also just have, a lot of training. Like there's so many tools out there and it's really, really hard to know which tool when and where, and you can experiment as much as you have budget for. And there are some that, you can kind of get an in-between that'll help get you access to more tools, but it's really a matter of experimenting on them. And even then, it's really hard for us as a big company get approvals for all of that. So sometimes my team members or even me, we just go out and buy our own personal, test kind of account just to experiment with stuff. But I don't know the right answer for every single team. Yes, it's absolutely critical. If you're not doing something right now, you're going to be toast in a couple years. And I think that's pretty clear. Everyone knows that. How are you going to, I would start with, again, like when I said we spelled out all the steps, what are the things that your team delivers? Nail that and figure out ways that you can, automate parts and pieces of that. Number 2, think of what your team could offer, right? If we're going more into that storytelling and vision, if you're just sitting around saying, tell me what to do and I'll do it, I'll use AI to do it, like you're done already. The proactivity of going and saying, hey, this is where we should go. I have a vision for a better future. I know where, and that's where it's you as a leader, just like got to study and read and listen to podcasts and figure out what you think for your company is that new step. And then what's possible, like explore that magical, what if world of where could we go? And what are things that you could add that's different than your remit currently, I think is pretty critical as well.
Have you found any workflows so far where it's like so clear that AI can create some kind of efficiency that you've then like just you're all in on a specific product or workflow yet, or is it still early in the experimentation phase?
Oh, no, absolutely. A lot of those. I mean, I mentioned the illustrations, like when we're doing illustration design, like that flow is completely changed with new tools. So it's no longer, there's some Adobe tools that have helped, keep up and help, stimulate that and move it along. Video, I mean, Capsule, where you guys are at, like there's a lot with, shortcutting, cutting down long explainer videos and finding little bits and pieces that are right and adding some quick opening and closing on it and, speeding up a lot of that. Absolutely. There's a lot with words and transcriptions that we've automated to help get a lot of that done so that it's not just transcribing things. And if you need to do an edit, or whether it's audio or something, you can look through it a lot faster just based off of the words. Image generation, like that's just been the huge thing over the last couple of years. I mean, it was rough. We'd have to all go into Mid-Journey on Slack and on Discord and try and figure things out. And that was like the best tool we had. And now there are a whole bunch of different ways of us doing that pretty fast. There's still a lot
How much of that, curious, like how much of those workflows is replacing an existing process that's just like cheaper, faster, better versus, or I would say cheaper, faster, maybe not cheaper, faster, the same, versus like kind of unlocking net new content creation that was previously constrained by existing resource constraints. Do you have a sense of that?
I don't know if I can give you like exact numbers. I know that, to be honest, it's also where we're at right now is I wouldn't say it's just the perfect answer of like, oh, just go off to, Veil 3 and create a new video out of it. Like there's still so much manual stuff that like it may take longer to create a video in AI than just go out and shoot it, right? Because the amount of hours to edit and fix and piece together, all that kind of stuff. So I'd say where things are really faster is like internal, absolutely, where we don't care. Internal stuff's going really fast. A big external shoot, I'm still going to do, like I showed you some images in the beginning of my presentation. I'm still going to go out and natively shoot stuff because I want very unique moments that would just take a long time. If I'm like, all right, put a Twilio track jacket on this person, it's doable, but it's not perfect, right? So it's easier for me to shoot a bunch of stuff and then adjust and tweak. So like those inputs, I'm still creating a lot of bespoke inputs and a lot of the internal stuff's going faster. And then sometimes making adjustments on the fly. Like some of those things we can do fairly easily. Like if I wanted to put a different head on the person and change their race, great, I can do that fairly easily. But I'm also very cautious and careful around humans of how we're recreating humans. Like objects all day, but humans is a little tricky still.
Very cool. Well, I want to open up to the group. We've got a pretty good crew here. Anyone have any questions? You're welcome to jump off mute and ask your question to Adam directly if you feel so inclined.
Adam, it's Kim Grobe. I'll ask you.
Hello. Oh, so good to hear from you.
So good to see you. I mean, I'm totally bought into all of what you're saying, and I'm so inspired by the ways that you're using AI and still protecting the need and promoting the need for human creativity. And I think as a creative, and probably many of the creatives on this call, we're all in with what you're saying. But how have you convinced the decision makers who hold the purse strings that this is the right approach?
Yeah, that's totally fair. Because this last year has been quite a ride in that where, my boss, the CMO, comes in and is like, all right, it's all changing. Maybe we don't even need all these people. Maybe we don't need all this stuff. Like I think what I've done is first have some very deep discussions with them on things like taste, sharing articles with them. I've had, and we've done experiments. Here's how far we can get with it. You want to see behind the sausage making? Great. Steps 1 through 10, we can automate step 4 and step 8. But these others are like right now, the tools just don't do it. Like just giving them visibility into the process. Because I think right now there are a lot of leaders out there, as you go out on the speaking circuit, they're just seeing the top line and then the big story, and that AI can do this, and they'll see one image and they'll be like, done. Like, we don't have to spend any money on all this other crap, right? We're done. And I think it does take a hand. Like, it took almost a year for our CMO, for us to talk him off the cliff and be like, yeah, that's great. And we really want to go there, because you got to be careful that you don't look like you're a cotton-headed nitty muffin where you don't want to be progressing. And you're like, no, AI sucks and we got to be careful. Creativity is the bomb. It's a tough balance. But when we would walk them through reality of what WorkSlop is doing, showing articles, showing examples, showing, the amount of time it takes to go back and fix stuff, like, I think they get it. But there are just not enough leaders who are seeing the work to really get it yet. And so that's why they're pontificating about theory and not practicality. Will it get there? Probably. Like, there will be a lot of things that are going to get there. We're going to automate it and it's going to be awesome. But again, where I focus on taste, I've said that so many times in the last year, I can't tell you how many times. And now they all quote it. We need taste. We need good vision. We need a good story. We need our why. Like, I just keep repeating those elements over and over and over until they're like, okay, we get it. That's really important. We're not just going to go fire off all the designers because we think we've got, some new AI tool. Like, it's their jobs are going to change, and we're going to slowly adapt to it. And it's just a repetition game. It feels like, Kim.
Adam,
that's a great question and answer.
I'm curious if you, in your experience in your career, if you've experienced this similar type of having to basically like align stakeholders and like kind of do some change management to this scale for something like AI. Like, is there a comparable in your career to something as big as AI, or does it feel very different?
That's an interesting question. And first of all, I would say that's been my whole career, my whole filthy career, I swear, since like mid 90s, is just proving the value. That's why I wrote that whole book. Like, it was like a 7-year journey of like, no, it really does matter. I promise. There was a lot, like, I would say early on when we were doing a lot of print ads and stuff in the 90s, and then the big change of like 2001, that was a huge change with the .com boom and everything, moving out. And it was like, there were a lot of creatives trying to learn, what is this web design world, and trying to figure that out. That felt just as big as the AI one. And now we look back, and it was like, I think a year or so ago when I was at Splunk, like 100% of our campaigns were digital. Of course, like, why wouldn't they be? Maybe there was a billboard every once in a while, but it's probably a digital billboard. Like, it was just, it had changed. So, I mean, this is a big deal. I'm not going to downplay it. Like, this is definitely hitting us faster. That one took like 8 years, it felt like, for things to kind of transition and move. And this one's like 2 years. So it's definitely a lot faster. But I think what Kim brought up is real. Like, the stakeholder management has been my life, and it will continue to be that. And I don't think it's never not been. And it's really, I've just had to like really understand the art of influence and knowing stakeholders and what style they are. Because some people are friendly, some people are neutral, some people are antagonistic. It's like, you got to like really understand who they are and what they care about, because just showing up with a bunch of facts doesn't necessarily solve that, right? So knowing where they're going, I think, is critical. Let me give you a little bit of good hope and good news that I've been seeing lately. And I don't know if many of you on the call here are seeing the same, but there was this long trend over the last decade where it was like, we're just moving more and more and more towards performance marketing, where it was, forget the brand, it's all about those leads, and it's all about, squeezing the juice out of every little interaction. Because of AI, and because that has like sped up those juice squeezing processes, I am seeing a trend where there is a flop, where more people and brands and companies are moving more towards brand marketing than performance marketing. If you look at Colin Fleming over at ServiceNow, we had him come talk to our team. Where my boss is going, and I'm seeing much more of it on LinkedIn, they're seeing that AI creates the speed and efficiency, and it's like performance to the nines. But we're losing more and more leads, and people are caring less and less and less. And incoming search traffic and everything off Google, it's all shot to hell. But the thing that's helping is having that story and the stake in the ground and the emotional, what you stand for, and people connecting. and they're glomming on that more. So I'm seeing budgets move away from like, you know, I don't even know what it was, like 20/80, and inching more and more closer to that, you know, 50/50. And like, that's the rallying cry of my boss that are coming, is like, we need to spend more on brand and story.
Yeah.
We've got the optimization figured out. Like that's not the focus. So I think that's a really interesting thing that's come out of AI, is like, it's pushing us away from more of the optimization and less, because we see the slop, and it pushes us more towards branding and storytelling, which is really fascinating.
And there's a correlation there too with hopefully the bandwidth that it creates for the creative team to work on those things, which I think is kind of a win for creatives in the organization.
Totally.
Awesome.
Sorry, I talk too much. Anyone else? This is a discussion. People want to you can all have a better answers than me, but feel free to join in.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I know we got a few more minutes left. Or doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment. All right. Speak now, forever hold your peace. This was awesome.
David, can I comment on David's comment? Because it's absolutely true, and it's hilarious that it's like the AI company does their big brand campaign and it's shot physically, right? And same thing with like Apple, their new animation of the logo, it's all like physically shot, not through AI. Like, it's just good to know that it's like it doesn't mean that AI is bad and it's no good. There's just a time and a place for everything. And so understanding the value of creating a new emotion versus automating something is just super, super important.
Well, and it also speaks to what you just said about like, those are also kind of brand stories too, in a way. Like how they did it is becoming part of the story of how it becomes so known. I think that probably OpenAI made that decision very consciously, and I'm sure Apple did too. And they know that people are kind of holding on to these stories about content that is actually, you know, much more human than some of the other things, especially the stuff that we're starting to see on social media every day, which feels like increasingly is just AI slop, as they say.
Yeah, so much.
Awesome. Okay,
like
well,
we have one more question. We have a few more minutes and a couple questions. From Melissa, any insights into the merge of data and creative roles?
Melissa, maybe tell us more about what you mean by that, the merge of data and creative roles.
So I recently read a post by the head of global brand. They mentioned like where it will kind of be combined, expected to be in one role, person who can be more on a data analytics side and also develop the branding and creative side. So I think it's kind of like some of the roles now, they expect you to do like multiple like disciplines, like motion design, branding, this web and all that. Well, data will be thrown into that as well. Are you seeing that? Have you heard of that? Like,
not as much.
No,
not as much. But I do see how they get there. I mean, I worked at Adobe, and it's like the creative company, but it was, web analytics, and I worked on a web analytics product for a long, long time. And people often think, oh, there's a conflict there. Like you can't. One is like right brain thinking, and one's left brain thinking. And I'll be honest, like the more as a great creative that you become more of a strategist and a creative in one, you see the value of data. You see how data is like the setup, and then that's how you spin it and wrap it in an emotional blanket, and that's how it goes out there. And something really fascinating when I was studying a lot of the neuroscience stuff is that if you really dig into it and how the brain takes data, like if let's say your data is like you making a conscious decision of like, all right, I don't like this object or this thing, I will not buy any more of those. I'll only buy the things I like. Emotions are truly just a whole bunch of logical data and decisions that you've made wrapped up into a small, quick emotion. So really, creativity equals emotion, and emotion equals a whole bunch of tightly packed data. Like the more I've thought of like over my career, whether you're a strategist or a data scientist, like you're just looking at things from a different angle and trying to come up with a story. So I can see how it goes together more, but I'm not seeing a ton of that happening. It's more high levels. Maybe there's like a leader that like, you got to run a data team, you got to run a creative team. Maybe that's where it's seeing, but I still think there's a value of like training your brain for the emotional nuances of experiences so that you can recreate those and have great customer experiences.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Did
Awesome.
Lindsay pop off? I'm not sure if you were.
Yeah, I don't know if Lindsay's still on. I saw her on here earlier too. But she's great.
I don't know if you're talking about this, Lindsay, but I was
Yes.
thinking a little bit about this idea of story. So, the sort of the whiplash of story being a bad word. What you're talking about, Adam, in terms of growth marketing versus brand marketing, and God forbid you say that you're trying to sneak in some brand strategy, underneath the growth marketing. And so some of the sort of whiplash that I feel like I've experienced in my career of trying to sort of sneak in like true branding while, under the guise of growth marketing. But something that I've been thinking a little bit about is how do you sort of deal with also the different types of business models that there are. So, I've been working with, the B2B brands where there's mergers and acquisitions and, private equity and all of that. And that story, that business story is, quite different. And just sort of thinking through, I think one of the things that AI can do to help is can help you actually tell a story really, really quickly. Because I think what you said that is so powerful is that any type of system that automates has to be built on a foundation that is sound. And that is where story and structure is critical. And no matter how fast you want to go, if it's built on junk comes out. So I've just been sort of thinking through, I think you just can't, even if the stakeholders don't want to hear that you need to have a foundation, you have to have a foundation, no matter how fast you want to move. Or even because you want to move fast.
Yeah. I think it's even digging a little bit deeper if you're talking about business strategy, because it doesn't matter whether it's B2B or B2C. Like that, to me, that doesn't matter. There is a lot of boring in B2B. Oh, I totally get it. Most of my career after agency, like the last 12 years, has been on B2B. And I think those are just limitations of leadership. Not like a lot of times they'll just see it like it's always been done this way, and so therefore it should be done this way. And there are tricks to get past that. But at a more fundamental level, when so many people come up and talk to me and they say, here's my company and this is the business, why aren't they embracing more creativity and more story and more of all that stuff? And there's a great book by, I can't remember their names. It was like the something of business strategy. And they really analyze, like, there really are only 3 business strategies out there. There's customer intimacy, there's operational excellence, and then there's product innovation. And in my mind, if your business strategy is customer or product innovation, you have a great chance of infusing creativity and story and making a difference, because it's all about that custom, personalized experience within those. But if it's operational efficiency, good luck. Like if your business is trailer manufacturing and they're all looking the same and it really doesn't matter, it's just a matter of like speed and quantity, you're kind of screwed. And I think you should just pick a different company, because you're going to beat your head against the wall for your whole career trying to get that company to be creative, and they're never going to adapt because the operational efficiency model just does not work for that.
I love that. Well, we are at time. Whitney on the Capsule team just dropped in a survey. If you all could just take 1 minute to fill that out and let us know what you thought of this event and who else you would like to have on these future events. We would love to hear from you. Adam, this was an incredible session. We really appreciate you sharing all of your insights and taking the time to be with us. And we will hopefully see you all at the next Capsule Creative Table. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Bye.
All right.